Hi, welcome to Wetpixel Live. My name's Adam Hanlon and I'm joined by Alex Mustard. Hi Alex.
Morning Adam, good to see you.
Good to see you too. I like your t-shirts, very nice.
Thank you. Yeah, from one of our trips to Lembe.
One of our trips, yeah, great time we had. Anyway.
Well, we're nice to be there right now. But
it would
sadly,
be, yeah, sadly. Soon, we hope. One of the things that photographers often hear about and possibly like the sound of is the word snoot. It's a great sounding word.
Snoot.
Snoot, yes. Spoken with a suitably South African English accent. I think probably we should start off by talking about or what is a snoot, and then discussing some of the options that are available for us underwater photographers in terms of snooting and snoots. So I'm going to pass the buck on to Alex, as is my way, and ask him to define what is a snoot.
Okay, well, a snoot is anything really that you fit in front of a flash gun. I've got a flash gun here that reduces its beam angle down.
Yep.
Allowing you to light up a smaller area than the flash gun normally would. And in underwater photography, we tend to use them in two ways. One is to create a beam of light that's smaller than the picture area,
yep,
so that we get a spotlight of light within the frame.
Yep. And
the other is actually to use them with to create a beam of light that's maybe just slightly larger than the frame, so that you don't really know that as a viewer that this was taken by a snoot, but by not spreading light everywhere, it's a really great remedy for backscatter.
Yep, controlling the fall of the light. Yep.
Yeah, and both of them. And so the simplest form of snoot is any sort of opaque to light, or blocking of light thing that you can put on the front of here that has some sort of hole in the front to let light out.
Yep.
I've used everything from drain pipes to funnels, to
Coke
plastic
bottles
with
yeah,
tape wrapped around them, whatever needs must in the field. Here, this is a sort of a standard beam reduction ring. Let me put it on in the right place. So that is the beginnings of a snoot, and then in this particular set, there's different size openings that I can push onto the front of that to create a snoot. The downside of this more simple design snoot is it's a reductive snoot. So you're starting off with a lot of light and you're blocking quite a lot of it out in order to create a beam of light out the front of it. And if your strobes aren't that powerful, what you can find is actually the spotlight of light that a thing like this creates, particularly if you start getting down to very, very narrow openings to create a tiny spotlight of light for macro. That light is actually very dim, and it can be quite a restriction. So cheap to build, easy to do yourself, cheap to buy, but ultimately because you're reducing the light, you can end up with quite a low level of light to deal with at the end of the reduction. So what a lot of us prefer to use is more transmitting snoots, where you're taking much more of the light that comes out of a flash gun and focusing that down to a point. And that way you've got a much brighter light source to work with, and that allows you to do snoot photography in bright, shallow conditions without, and still be able to get a black background if you want to. It also means that you're not having to hammer the flash gun out on full power all the time and limiting the number of shots.
Recycling times, all that kind of business. It's important to stress that snoots actually aren't unique to underwater photography. They've been used in pseudo photography particularly for a long time, and to achieve a similar thing, to direct and control the amount of light that's falling on the subject. But I think in underwater photography, obviously, like every other technique, there is a cyclical technique that comes and goes, different people do it at different times. But in its most recent iteration, possibly one of the pioneers was someone called Kerry Wilk, who's produced a great deal of snoot imagery. And although I don't know whether he was the first or not, certainly Kerry was one of the first people to start looking at refining the concept of how to design snoots, and moving away from bits of wetsuit sleeve and all the other bits and pieces people were improvising with. And combined with that, obviously, timing wise, was the fiber optic had become available, fiber optic transmitting cables and fibers, and he produced one of the early fiber snoots. I'm not sure that was the first. Do you remember one before the ReefNet one, Alex?
Not that, no, but actually the photos that he became well known for in photography were pictures taken with a simple reducing snoot. And actually, I remember judging the Wetpixel Dive Photo Guide contest the year he first entered those, which is now the Wetpixel Masters contest. And I remember when they came in, they were so fresh, so different from anything anyone else was doing. And I just remember saying to one of the other judges, I don't actually care which one of these wins, but one of these has to win. And we're arguing over which one endlessly. And, they're all so far above anything else anyone else is doing. They were amazing. And actually, we had a lot of difficulty because of the fact that he had 4 or 5 pictures, all of which were just head and shoulders above everything else in the contest. But we were spending ages and ages arguing between them. And in the end, we were getting to a point where maybe another picture that we could all agree on being good was actually ending up further above it. So, but fortunately, we came to our senses and made sure that Kerry, and I think Kerry went on and won something like almost 100 awards in underwater contests.
I think we stopped him from entering by making him a judge in them all. That was give everyone else a chance.
But yeah, I think he might have then. But he was aware of the limitations of it, and all those early shots he used to take them at night because he didn't have enough light coming out of the end of his snoot to not be overwhelmed by daylight if he did them during the day. And that's, I think, led him to want to focus the beam. And the first method he came up with was a fiber snoot, and that was quite widely copied because all you needed to do was to take a thick fiber optic, put it up near to the flash tube, and then direct it somehow. And the lock line lines were a really good way of doing that. So this is a fiber snoot for an in-on flash gun. In-on flash guns have got 2 tubes in them. Yep. So this fiber snoot is designed to pick up the light from each of those, and then it leaves you with light coming down the end of the fiber. And with these very noisy lock line arms, you can bend your fiber optic and it will stay in position and hold them. These remain reasonably popular. I find them harder to use than the next type of snoot I'm going to use.
Yeah, they are.
And I think that's a really important point, because the best snoot for you is the one that you find easiest to use.
Yeah.
If you're constantly having to rely on someone else to hold it and aim it for you, that's all well and good when you've got access to, say, a good guide or DM in Asia who's really experienced in these things.
Yep.
But when you go diving in other parts of the world and you go, well, you know what, this would work really well on a snoot, yep, but I now don't have someone to hold it for me, suddenly the techniques can come. But these are actually very popular for lighting subjects by having a dive guide, because it's actually very easy for a dive guide to bend this around and actually to hold it above a subject like this and allow you to directly light the subject. Yep. And I know a lot of pictures in Analan in particular, they do a lot of nudibranch photography with the DMs holding this snoot off camera and just lighting the subject, and then the photographer just gets his nudibranch in here and shoots it. And these are, because of the way they work, they're very easy to use like that.
It's worth pointing out they produce a very, very fine little point of light, and that's what makes them hard to use. Is that
it does depend on the end pieces, though.
Yeah,
I have to say.
Yeah.
But they don't give you, because typically the light, certainly from the in-on, you don't get any direct beam of torchlight or from the focus light coming down the end of these. Yeah. So they're hard to. They're okay to use, but I find they're harder to use on your own than the next type of snoot, which is the sort of the condensing lens snoot. Yeah. So this is a snoot, but it's got a lens in the back, actually very similar to a screw-on diopter used on a camera. It has an opaque screen in the back. The light from the strobe hits that screen and then is focused by the close-up diopter, which is basically in the front here, into a point of light about that far in front of the strobe. And these are, I find, very easy to use yourself. They take a bit of time to get the knack for them, but once you have, they work very well. And because they focus the light to a point, what they can do is they actually, all the different brands, this is an LSD from Retro, but there's lots of brands, you can get inserts for them, and that allows you to change the size of the hole. So with the Retro one, you have this focus on the subject, it's creating a pool of light, say, that sort of size. Yep. You drop the holes in to here, and it reduces that beam down at that point of focus, which is at about that sort of distance away. And you've got one there. That works very nicely. And also for competition firms, you can make that hole any shape you like, and you will get that as a focus shape on the subject. Generally, circular ones are a little bit more natural.
The other major advantage you've got with this over the fibre Snoot is that if you've got a reasonably powered focus light or aiming light on the strobe itself, that will show through the end of the LSD. So that then allows you to line the subject up using the focus light or using the strobe.
And that's actually very useful for your dive guide too, even if you're working. But you do want to have a strobe, ideally with a focus light in the middle.
Yeah.
So that it comes down through the tube. If your focus light is off center, such as on this one, on the in-on, it doesn't go through these tubes as well, and actually often ends up a little bit offset because of the angles.
Yeah.
One thing that Retro did for a while is they used to make this with clear sides on here. Yeah. And everyone was like, "Aren't you wasting light?" And it doesn't, because it's actually, you want the light that's shining straight forward from the strobe.
Yeah.
However, they've stopped doing that because everyone kept saying, "Surely you must be wasting light." But actually, this bit doesn't need to be opaque. But they tend to do it like that.
As far as I know, using the actual lens focusing technique, obviously there's the Retro LSD. Who else is doing that? Do we know of anyone else?
Yeah, I think Saga might have made one. Certainly someone in Europe has made ones quite well known.
Yeah.
And you can actually make them so that this is movable, and then you can actually change the distance to the focus point.
You can refocus it. Yep.
Yeah, and you can actually you can make them with a mechanical aperture in the back, so that you can also at this end, instead of using a sliding thing like this, you can actually tilt a lever and make your hole smaller and smaller.
10 by certainly do one that refocuses at different points. And in actual fact, theirs has a laser aiming pointer as well. And the idea obviously is you use the laser aim. It's a laser light that's aligned along the tube of the Snoot itself. Wherever you put the laser should be the spot where the light comes out. But again, I'm not sure how effective that is. I haven't actually used it, but yeah, it's.
I tend to, with the Snoot, use the fixed focus technique, whereas I focus on my subject and I then don't refocus. And I know, having set my Snoot up at the beginning of the dive, if my subject is in focus, it's in the light. For me, I find it a really easy technique to use, and I have no problem at all doing this in gloves, in cold water, whatever. I think you just need that discipline of, don't try and set your Snoot up on your subject. Set it up away from your subject so that you can
find a rock,
frame the picture. Yeah, and then move into your subject, knowing that when it's in focus in the middle of the frame, it's in the light. If at that point you find the light is a bit high on the subject, what you then need to do is just back up ever so slightly, refocus, and take another shot, and it should be in picture. If the light's a little bit low in the frame, you need to just go a little bit closer and refocus, and then you can make the fine adjustments. And I find that is a very reliable technique. That said, I think the third type of sort of modern Snoot I want to talk about is the new backscatter flash. The mini flash, which is actually a flash gun designed as a Snoot. Which is, I'm sorry, my phone's ringing away, which I think is a really interesting concept. Now, I have tried to use one, but actually the backscatter mini flash is quite sensitive to the triggering amount of light. And the amount of light coming down the fiber optic, I did have quite old fiber optics on my housing, wasn't enough on my housing to trigger it. So I've not had a chance to try it. And I know a few people have been having trouble triggering them. And I saw there was a news item this week on Wetpixel that Underwater Technics have introduced a new circuit board with a higher output. Underwater Technics make the flash trigger boards that are in most housing brands. They're rebranded often by the housing manufacturers. And they've actually made one with more powerful LEDs. And they said it's specifically for the backscatter flash.
But I think just to troubleshoot the issue, I think if you have the backscatter one, you're struggling to get it to fire, I think the first thing to do would be to try a different fiber optic cable. Sometimes it can just be the transmission through the cables itself. If you have an older housing, you may find that it does require a replacement in the board to make sure there's sufficient output to trigger the flash. But yeah, always start with the cables first. The cables are your most likely.
And I think that one is people are finding really easy to use because it's small. And long and thin, and that makes it very easy to get the aim right, because you've really got this, something that's exactly the right shape to aim. It's like a dart to aim. It's got a long lithium battery at the back, which makes it good, and then the Snoot coming out the front. So it's really nice and easy to aim, and it's got a very powerful light inside to help you aim
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people have found that if they're having to do their snooting on their own, it's been really valuable to them. I've not had a chance to try it myself, but for me, I'm not so desperate to try it because I don't need to start traveling with an extra flash gun for snooting, and I don't find it difficult to use an existing snoot. But if you are struggling, as lots of people are, it might be a really good solution for you.
And I think also if you're someone that's really into snoot photography, it's very small, very light, and it may well be the option that, you say, okay, I'm not going to carry a conventional strobe, I'm just going to take this one with me, and it's small and light. Obviously, it will limit your creative options in that it's going to be, you're going to be shooting snoot images. But some people, I know people that have been on trips with Alex and I who've basically put a snoot on their strobes at the beginning of the trip, and it's hardly come off. So that would be another option, yeah. Obviously, it's a tool that we very much hope to be able to try out and evaluate more fully soon.
Yeah, it's been a funny year.
Yeah, it has.
It's an understatement of some sort
Absolutely.
for 2020. So none of us have had the chance to try it yet.
So I think we've kind of run the full gamut here from Coke bottles and wetsuit sleeves all the way through to the latest. It was released at DEMA last year, so obviously DEMA 2019, and it was on the market facing. So we've covered the full range. I'm sure there are other snoots out there as well that we haven't covered, but they'll fall generically into one of those types that we've mentioned here. So thank you, Alex. Do you put metadata tags on your images that you shoot with a snoot?
I sometimes tag my pictures snooted in the captions on my website, so I know what you're getting at.
Yeah.
And that's really because I think there's an unnatural look to them.
Right.
Certainly, my pictures sell outside the world of underwater photography, and people sometimes want to know why is a subject. Snoot pictures look incredibly dramatic, but they're not at all realistic.
Yeah.
And if a natural history magazine is wanting to use that picture, I think it's important to understand why this subject is floating in the black.
Yeah.
Because it's been shot that way. So I quite often say, illuminated by a snooted strobe or something in a caption. So I'm sure if you type snoot into my website, you'll find some snooted images.
That's a really interesting. I'm glad we raised it because I think that's a good point. It's a creative tool rather than necessarily a documentary tool. So
very good for competitions. Outside of those realms, I find it's a little contrived to say, certainly for pictures to be used as illustrations outside underwater photography techniques.
Brilliant, Alex. Thank you for that. I'd like to thank our sponsor for this episode, which is Backscatter Photo and Video. Please, I'd like to thank you all very much for watching as well. Please feel free to add a like if you enjoyed it, and also to share your thoughts, comments, and suggestions in the comment section below the video. Thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you soon.